Hello all YouTubers, I'm the Weather Dude. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning back into my ninth hurricane season discussion for June 8th, 2020. Before I get on with today's video, however, I would ask that you please do subscribe because sadly, tons of my watch time has been coming from unsubscribed viewers. We are on our way to our next goal of 600 subscribers, and thank you guys so much, by the way, for 500 subscribers. Let's get to our next goal of 600 subscribers, alright? So please do subscribe, and also, as applies to every single one of you, please watch the whole video as well as liking and sharing the video. Thank you. Now, let's get on with today's video. So this is my ninth hurricane season discussion, and we're going to be just discussing, obviously, because I will have a mini forecast at the end. But the primary goal of these now is to discuss the tropics and just to see, do the conditions come together right now for more tropical development. Kind of discuss the Atlantic hurricane season basin in general. But my 10th hurricane season outlook will have even more updates, so stay tuned for that. But please also, after this video, check out my severe weather outbreak, potentially for the northern plains, on the top right corner of your screen. That video does need its views and watch time. Another video that needs its views and watch time is Tropical Storm Cristobal making landfall, on the top right corner of your screen as well after this video. So let's get started. So for June 2020, obviously we're going to have meteorology updates by the next video, so that's why you should stay tuned for the next video. And by the way, so since this is just a discussion and not really, I will be updating my mini forecast, but again, this is basically a discussion. I will be doing these pretty much hopefully every few days now. And if we look at June 2020, all right, so a lot of the models are down negative neutral phase. Only JMA is positive neutral. But right now, we're below that zero line, actually. So all the models that are on the left side of that black line, good job, you're correct. And the average of all the models is actually about negative 0.2 degrees Celsius. So, I mean, that's pretty close to La Nina. I mean, obviously, in the American standards, we need negative 0.5 for La Nina. And by Australian standards, we need negative 0.8. Now, July, all right, again, notice how the models go to the left. All right, and this is what the models are pointing towards. Now we're negative 0.3 below in terms of the mean, the average of all the models. By August here, I look at August. I mean, if you're going by American standards here, we have like I think about 4 or so models that are already in La Nina phase: UKMO, the NOAA, and NASA and Bird meteorology models. So by American standards, that is a La Nina, and the lower this is, the farther to the left this is, all right, the more active hurricane season we could possibly have. Keep in mind, though, even if we are in a neutral, that still can mean active hurricane season. Again, 2005, the most active hurricane season on record in the Atlantic, and it was a neutral phase. It wasn't even a La Nina. So both La Nina and neutral are good for hurricane seasons. El Nino, no, not at all. All right, and by August or September, and then October here, nothing really changes. The pattern doesn't really change. All the models are going farther and farther towards the left here, closer to that La Nina phase. And pretty much by American standards, all models except for the JMA are in a La Nina phase by this point. So something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind, especially for the hurricane season, right? Because this can mean a potential hyperactive season. Now, the monthly sea surface temperature anomalies. Again, could we possibly hit La Nina by late August, maybe September? That's what the spaghetti models. That's what that green line is. The average of all the spaghetti models. A lot of them take it to La Nina in a quick, in a short amount of time. Some keep it at neutral and then drop into La Nina at the end. But either way, not one model says El Nino. Not one. There's always one model that wants to be like, oh, go up towards El Nino. But surprisingly, we don't have any of that. But there is one model that goes ridiculously low. But, we can't rule anything out yet. But the general cone in terms of these models is right here. Could it go more towards neutral? Could it drop towards La Nina? La Nina could also obviously mean less wind shear. And even though La Nina results in a more active hurricane season, it does usually, at least for the eastern part of the U.S., result in a less active winter season. So that's something we have to watch too. And hopefully my winter forecast will come out late summer. We'll have to see about that. All right, but in terms of the Nino 3-4 probabilities, again, La Nina chances will go up starting July and heading up, and our chances will peak by October, where we have a 56% chance of La Nina conditions. In terms of neutral chances, our best chances are now. Obviously, they'll be dropping as we head throughout the season. Our record, the lowest point is 44.4%, and then by November, it's pretty much the toss-up, pretty much. 50%. But since it's negative 0.8, that would pretty much result in La Nina, but we're going to have to see, because it also has to be there for a long amount of time. Not just drops to 0.5, it's like, ooh, La Nina. No, it has to be there for a decent amount of time. But again, here's your El Nino chances: completely zero, bottom zero, bottom barrel here. But the ocean temperatures are going to be dropping farther below average as we head throughout the rest of the year. So that's something to keep in mind. This is the Nino 3-4 region, because I'm not talking about the Atlantic waters right now. I'm talking about that little stripe of Nino 3-4 region in the Eastern Pacific. And if that's cooler, I would say the hurricane season keep being more active for the Atlantic. Now, in terms of the Nino 3-4 SST anomalies, again, June about negative -zero point 0.2, August according to negative -0.4, according to the Bureau of Meteorology, negative -0.7 by October here. All right, and when we look at the latest ocean temperature anomalies, obviously in the wake of Cristobal, we're having a little bit cooler waters right now for the Gulf of Mexico, but that shouldn't last all too long. Like I said, the only reason that's happening is because the wind flow behind Cristobal brought some little bit cooler air. So that's why, I mean, usually because in the wake of Arthur that we had by the Carolinas, actually got a little bit warmer. So that's kind of depends on the storm track, I guess, and how the wind flow is. But the Caribbean right now and parts of the Western Atlantic right now are above average, as well as the uh, extreme western part of the Gulf of Mexico by the eastern Mexican coastline. I'm talking about Texas coastline, Louisiana coastline, or at least south central Louisiana coastline is above average in terms of ocean temperatures currently. Now, in terms of the actual ocean temperatures, again, Gulf of Mexico, pretty much from now on, you're pretty much going to be at, I mean, the entire Gulf of Mexico is at 80 degrees or higher. Obviously, closer to Yucatan, we're a tad bit cooler, but it's still 80 degrees. But look at the Caribbean here. We've risen to 29, or even 30 degrees Celsius, which is like in the upper 80s in terms of ocean temperatures. And the Gulf Stream, running very well above average. Some parts of the southern Gulf Stream are in the 80s right now. Um, 27, 28, 29 otherwise in parts of the other parts of the western Atlantic, and now heading out to the tropical Atlantic. You've seen a change from the last hurricane discussion, haven't you? All right, not as much blues. All right, they've been confined to the coast of Africa now. This entire region, if you watched my previous hurricane video, you would have saw that this whole region here is pretty much blue, or at least that's blue to some degree. That is now recently filled in with some oranges and even a little bit of red. So, starting to see a change because of that La Nina or neutral or La Nina pattern for the tropical Atlantic. And those 80-degree waters, they're starting to march closer. All right, eventually, this is all going to spread this way, and eventually, pretty much the whole picture here will be covered in yellow. Pretty much, but not quite. It depends on how warm the waters get throughout the season. But again, even if a storm were to come off the coast of Africa, it won't have a chance of forming yet. Still some wind shear, still some dry air. But that'll change. Okay, we obviously have another month and a half, probably a month and a half before we start seeing activity come off of Africa when the conditions can get favorable. Once it leaves Africa, as it heads west, the waters get warmer. So we're going to watch as these tropical waves will come off in the next about 45, 60 days or so. Now, the Caribbean ocean temperature not only, again, is 0.4 degrees above average. So Caribbean is doing very well right now, and that can increase hurricane activity. Atlantic, the MDR, again, is doing very well as well. We're third of a degree above average Celsius, which is, I mean, you could say near, like, I want to say like 0.7 degrees Fahrenheit above average. Right, but still makes a big difference. When you look at the North Atlantic, obviously, again, this counts like, I'm pretty sure this counts like the Arctic and out on the New England area and by like, Europe in the same, and that same latitude. So that accounts for some cooler water up there. But I still like to show North Atlantic because you can see that it has risen, all right, since the end of May. So that's why I wanted to show you that one. East Tropical Atlantic doing surprisingly well, actually. We were at 0.3 below average. Now we soared up to 0.15 above average. So the East Tropical Atlantic, again, I showed you guys, it has started to warm up a little bit. Obviously, that's the East Tropical Atlantic. The MDR region is just this specific region right here, but the East Tropical Atlantic is the whole thing in general. All right, so that is the latest there. And in terms of the Nino 3-4 index, again, we dropped to like pretty much La Nina stage. Obviously, we need to hold it there, but we dropped to nearly negative 0.6 degrees below average. We rose up, and now we're starting to fall again. Now we're at a quarter of a degree Celsius below average, which is about a half a degree Fahrenheit, which is still a lot here. Tropical intensity index, central and western Gulf of Mexico, we have some favorable to even highly favorable conditions for development, as well as much of the Caribbean here. Highly favorable conditions for development. But as for parts of the western Atlantic, too much, let's say the water's quite warm enough, we'd still have some wind shear. But Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico still can sustain another tropical cyclone for now. Now, you might recognize this, you might not. This is the 26.5 degree isotherm. You might be thinking, well, what is that? Well, obviously we know that at the surface, the waters can be 80 degrees. That can help tropical cyclones, but it helps even more if the waters on the subsurface are also 80 degrees plus. So this is saying how far underwater, how far below sea level can we go and still see waters of 80 degrees plus that can fuel hurricanes? And and obviously the higher up the graph we are, the better, because obviously the more heat for that hurricane. And in terms of the Northern Caribbean here, you can go 125, maybe even 160 meters underneath the surface and still have 80 degree waters plus. And that, to me, that is just spectacular. And that could even get better as we head throughout the hurricane season. And that's about, we're talking about here, 400 to 500 feet below sea level, and still see some 80 degree water. So that is remarkable. And here's the Northern Caribbean right by Cuba as well. Look at the tropical cyclonic heat that we have. Tropical cyclonic heat potential. That is what TCHP means, in case you guys were wondering. But yeah, so again, this tropical cyclonic heat that you see here is going to help because this will actually get a lot warmer. We're going to see more growing tropical cyclonic heat as we head throughout the rest of the hurricane season over the next few months. Now, the same map I showed you the first time with the 26.5 degree isostorm, except this time this is the Gulf of Mexico. Much of the Gulf of Mexico, you can go about, I'd say 150 feet, maybe, about 225 feet below sea level, and still get some 80 degree waters, which is not bad. All right, and if you go more towards the Gulf Stream, so about the center part of the Gulf of Mexico, the little bullseye here, central southern Gulf of Mexico, maybe you can go 125 feet meters below, so about 350 feet below, and still see some 80 degree waters, which is pretty impressive. And obviously, where you see that, that's where your tropical cyclonic heat is going to be, right there in the central southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. But the rest, we're talking about 20, 40 on the scale, so it's not too good. It's not that bad either. But we do have those 80 degree waters, and that's what's important. But what's even more important is that heat below the surface. We have some extreme dry air currently by Africa, that little patch there of white. You don't see that much. But in the wake of Cristobal and the dry air still getting wrapped into Cristobal, you might be thinking, well, the dry air stops in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, no, it doesn't. They're just not allowed to put this graphic on land. These colors don't extend on land, as you can tell. They get cut off on the coastline because obviously this is Saharan dry air. So, but here's the dry air still getting wrapped in the Cristobal. So because of that, we have some dry air present in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's why usually when a tropical cyclone comes through, another one doesn't come through in the same exact region right after that because obviously there's some dry air behind it. Caribbean, not too bad. We have a little bit of dry air. Gulf of Mexico isn't that bad either. The northern and southern edge of the Gulf of Mexico anyway. Western Atlantic, we see some low dry air amounts, but by Africa, we still have some high levels of dry air, which is going to keep this hurricane activity low for now, but that will change. And that's why also your tropical waves, or you can call them batches of thunderstorms, are getting steered well to the south below that 10-degree north latitude line, which is right between 10 degrees north latitude and 20 degrees north latitude is usually where you see the tropical waves come off of Africa during the hurricane season. Wind shear. Where Cristobal is, not much wind shear right now. All right, so that means also the Gulf of Mexico, not much shear at all. Central, western part of Gulf of Mexico, it is pitch perfect. Less than 10 knots of shear. Caribbean, not too bad. About 15 to 25 knots of shear, not too bad. Not the best conditions though, but that can sustain a tropical cyclone. But again, Western Atlantic, East Coast, out by Africa, we still got a lot of wind shear. But just north of that 10-degree north latitude line, there's a little pocket here that we have some low wind shear, where tropical waves can come off late in the summer. So that's an area we'll keep our eye on. In terms of the wind shear for the Caribbean, we have dropped just below the average. Obviously, you can see the line, that blue line is just below the black line there. Obviously, for the Caribbean, we reach our lowest wind shear values, I'd say late August and then let's say, about late August and through October is when we usually see our lowest wind shear, and then it goes back up, obviously, as we head through late fall and winter. Tropical Atlantic, we've also fallen way below average for our shear. Here's your average. We see one low spot in July, late July, then we see a little bit, goes back up a little bit, and then for Tropical Atlantic into September, we usually see our next lowest peak. But yeah, we're way below average for shear right now. We're talking about, 12 right now. I'd say about 12 knots or so. Usually it's about 16ths, but that's taking the whole Tropical Atlantic into account there. Now, in terms of the shear anomalies, by Africa, it's near average. We do have some above average shear, obviously because of that jet flow. And if you happen to see my tropical disturbance video on the top right corner of your screen, I talked about another tropical disturbance, potentially Dolly. It was meeting up with that cold front, and the high pressure steering around it is going to cause some higher wind shear to come through here. But like I said, we still got another 45 or 60 days before activity starts forming out here. In case you guys did not know, that was June 10th to June 15th. This is June 13th to June 18th. We start to see a little bit more wind shear start to fill in. Maybe towards the Azores, we don't see as much shear. maybe a little bit less here. But other than that, the wind shear is remaining pretty high as of now. And we're going to look at June 16th to 21st, a little pocket of below average shear starting to form. 20 knots below average, certainly possible, which is a lot. 19th to the 24th, even deeper layer, so potentially 30 knots of shear below average. And as for my mini forecast, this is the remainder of the season. Okay, so this might be thinking, why did your number go down for named storms? That is taking the three we've already had to account: Arthur, Bertha, and Cristobal, all tropical storms. So I took those into account, and as of additional named storms, I'm predicting 12 to 18 named storms and 8 to 12 hurricanes and 3 to 7 major hurricanes. Obviously, these two haven't moved because we haven't had a hurricane or major hurricane yet, so obviously those aren't going to move. But what did change right here is the named storms, obviously, because we had 3 of those already. So I took 3 off of each. So hopefully I'll be doing a little update, but that is my little mini forecast for the remainder of the season. Obviously, again, the goal of this video is to do a tropical discussion or hurricane season discussion. Named storms 12, hurricanes 6, 3 major hurricanes in terms of seasonal average. Obviously, if you want the full hurricane forecast for the whole season, please check out my 8th hurricane video on the top right corner of your screen. That was my final hurricane outlook, released about a few days ago. Now, again, the steering is what we really look at in terms of where the tropical storms could possibly go. Could they get steered towards the east coast of the United States, Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean? It all depends on that high pressure steering. And you see there's some more high pressure steering there. Could it mean some tropical storms get steered toward the east coast more? All right. And if you haven't already, I know I did this a long time ago. My why the East Coast could see more hurricanes this season on the top right corner of your screen. I do talk about how the East Coast could see more hurricane landfalls if this steering pattern does hold. So, thank you guys for watching today's video. I'm the Weather Dude, signing off. Until next time, catch you guys next video.